In Laboratory Reddit, today's story is:
My wife confessed her infidelity just as I was about to reveal my terminal diagnosis to her. The secret I decided to keep changed the final pages of our story. Last week I received news that completely changed my reality. All the medical tests confirmed the worst. I have stage 4 lung cancer. Hearing that diagnosis completely devastated me. Since then, I have been unable to hold back the tears and I am overcome by a feeling of total helplessness. I don't want to die. I'm not ready. There are so many things I still want to do, so much I want to express, but it seems that fate has already made its decision, and I find myself helpless in this situation. The doctors informed me that I only have a few months left to live. Those words constantly echo in my mind like an inevitable sentence from which I cannot escape. Until now I had kept this diagnosis to myself. Despite drowning in fear and sadness, I hadn't told my wife anything. I didn't want to worry her unnecessarily until I had definitive answers. But when the conclusive results finally came, I couldn't avoid it any longer. I tried to consult with other specialists to get more opinions, but they all agreed on the same diagnosis. In the end, I knew I had to tell my wife and prepare her for the inevitable. How do you tell the person you shared your life with, the love of your life, that you're going to die soon? How do you prepare for that conversation? This week, after days of struggling with my nerves, I finally found the courage to have that dreaded conversation. I rehearsed it in my head countless times trying to find the right words, but no matter how I worded it, it never felt right. When the moment arrived, I invited her to sit down and told her that we needed to talk about something important. As soon as she looked at me, I could see her immediate concern. My face must have reflected my state, because she immediately asked me if something was wrong. I didn't know how to broach the subject delicately, so I simply told the truth. Yes, I have discovered something and now everything is wrong. As I sat there gathering every ounce of strength to tell my wife about my diagnosis, something unexpected happened. She suddenly started to cry. Her tears took me completely by surprise. I hadn't even started to give her the news yet. I couldn't understand why she was so upset. I looked at her in confusion, searching for some explanation. It was then that she said something that left me completely disoriented. Between sobs, she began to stammer that she knew exactly what she was about to tell him. I was paralyzed trying to understand her words. How could she know? He hadn't told anyone about the tests, the results, or what was happening. I asked him, still baffled, "What are you talking about?" She took a shaky breath and then made the revelation I never anticipated. "You found out about my infidelity, didn't you? That's what you want to talk about, isn't it?" Her words hit me like a violent blow. An infidelity. My wife had an extramarital affair. For a moment I couldn't even process it. I sat there, stunned in silence, my mind struggling to assimilate what I had just heard. My heart, already vulnerable under the weight of my diagnosis, felt as if it had been shattered into countless pieces. My wife, still crying, began to explain. She confessed that she had been gathering the courage for weeks to tell me the truth. Faced with the reality of her confession, I finally managed to ask her, "Who is it? Who have you been with?" In tears, she admitted that it was her new work colleague, who had joined her office just a few months ago. She explained that from the moment they met, there had been an undeniable attraction between them. Initially, they both tried to ignore it, aware that they were both married. But 3 months ago, during a business trip, everything changed. They drank too much one night and ended up together. Although they both felt guilty afterwards, that night marked the beginning of a relationship that had continued ever since. My wife told me that she felt terrible about what she had done, about betraying me, but she insisted that this was not simply a meaningless affair. She claimed that she and her coworker were in love. Love. Hearing that word felt like a dagger twisting in my chest. How could she be in love with this man? All this time, I believed that she and I were meant to be together. I thought she was my soulmate. Now I discovered that she was nothing more than an unfaithful person. My whole world, which was already crumbling, now seemed completely destroyed. I had started this conversation prepared to tell my wife about my terminal cancer, the disease that is slowly consuming me from within. Instead, there she was, casually revealing this shocking confession that she had been having an affair and was in love with another man. How could this be real? How could the universe be so cruel? Before I could process the betrayal, my wife went on to say that last week she had noticed a delay in her period and decided to take a pregnancy test. The result was positive, she was pregnant. My stomach churned as I understood the implications of her words. As she and I had not been intimate in months, it was obvious, painful, and undeniably clear that the baby she was expecting belonged to her lover. I felt like I was drowning, unable to breathe. I asked her just to confirm, and she nodded in affirmation. She began to repeat to me how sorry she was for what she had done, How she wished she had gotten pregnant from me instead of him, but now that she was pregnant anyway, she had come to accept the situation. She didn't stop there. In fact, she began to rave about how this pregnancy was like a miracle for her. It happened unexpectedly and she felt it was part of God's plan. I could feel my heart breaking even more as she said those words. A miracle for her. Last year we had tried really hard to get her pregnant. We had gone through so much effort and frustration, only to finally give up and decide to leave it to chance, as it was affecting our mental health. After that, my wife, instead of sharing intimacy with me, had been with someone else. I had been completely blind to this. All this time I thought we were both fine, when in reality, she just wanted to replace me and conceive a child with someone else. Now she was expecting a baby, not mine, but the man she had been seeing behind my back. I felt sick. Every word she uttered made the pain sharper and the betrayal deeper. My wife kept telling me how sorry she was that I had to find out this way. She kept saying that she had wanted to confess for some time but hadn't found the courage to do so. Simultaneously, she also made it clear that she did not regret it because she had finally found her soulmate in this man. She assured me that she did not feel that she had done anything wrong and that perhaps this was the plan of the universe all along. She guaranteed that in time I would get over this anguish and maybe even find my own soulmate one day. I couldn't help but start laughing uncontrollably at that moment. Finding my own soulmate. How absurd. I wish I could. However, I didn't even have the luxury of time to consider such a possibility. My days were numbered. My life was fading faster than I could process this nightmare. My wife, the one person I believed I could always trust, had betrayed me and was now abandoning me. That's why I decided at that moment that my wife did not deserve to know my diagnosis. After all, what was the purpose? She was already planning to build a new life with someone else, expecting her child, dreaming of a future with her supposed soulmate. I didn't want her pity. I didn't want to make her feel guilty so that she would stay with me, even if I am dying. I still want to die with dignity, so I simply told her that since she was clear about her feelings for her lover and the direction her life was taking, there was no point in us continuing to be married. She nodded in agreement and almost nonchalantly offered to move out, since the house was mine. Since that conversation, my wife has been occupying the guest room and gradually packing her belongings to leave. She still has no idea about my cancer or how quickly my health is deteriorating. She hasn't noticed how I've lost weight, how my body is weakening, or the dark circles under my eyes from the nights I spend crying alone in the bed we used to share. At night I lie awake, my mind racing with thoughts about her and the man she left me for. I became obsessed with looking for him on social media, trying to understand who he is and why she threw away 8 years of our marriage for him. I discovered that he is married to a beautiful woman. I found his wife on the internet and she is 5 months pregnant. The irony is not lost on me. His wife is also expecting his child, probably with no idea that her husband is about to destroy her life just as my wife did to mine. I feel deep compassion for his wife even though I don't know her personally. She probably has no idea what's coming. I know exactly what it feels like to be taken by surprise, to have your world collapse without warning. My wife only confessed her infidelity to me because she mistakenly thought I already knew. What if his wife never receives that confession? What if she never discovers the truth about the man she is starting a family with? What if he abandons her without any explanation? I can't decide what to do. Part of me wants to tell his wife everything I know to spare her the pain of finding out too late like I did. But another part wonders if it's even my place to intervene. Maybe I'm too emotionally affected by this situation, so I can't make up my mind. So, am I the bad guy if I contact his wife and tell her everything I know? Should I at least warn her, or would that be cruel? Update 1. Thank you all for your kind words, support and advice. I never imagined that a group of strangers on the internet could offer me more compassion and understanding than my own wife. Your messages have been very meaningful to me during this unbearable period. I still have a long way to go. I need to gather my strength and share this devastating news with my parents and other relatives. But before I can even contemplate that, my priority is to end my marriage first. I need to divorce my wife and close this chapter. Initially, when it all fell apart, I felt nothing but self-pity. I thought about how cruel and unfair life had been and how everything I believed I could trust was crumbling. But now that pity has turned to revulsion. I am disgusted by my wife's actions, by her betrayal, by how she carelessly destroyed everything we built together. I gave her everything, my time, my energy, my love, and she repaid me in the worst possible way. It feels like she trampled on my heart without any consideration. Yes, I wish the circumstances were different. I wish she wasn't the kind of person capable of hurting me like that. I wish she wasn't unfaithful, someone who prioritized her own selfish desires over our marriage, over me. But the harsh reality is that he is. I have no desire to hold on to her. I don't want her in my life, not as my wife or as a person I can trust. She is better off with that other man she claims to love so much. Let them be together if that is what she wants. As painful as it is, I know I deserve better than someone who would betray me so cruelly. There is a bitter comfort in all this. If she had not confessed her infidelity, I would have gone to my grave believing that she was someone I could trust. Someone who deserved my love and everything I had worked for. I would have left her all my possessions, thinking that I was protecting her even after my departure. But now I know the truth and, thanks to that, I can make sure that she doesn't benefit from my effort while she shares it with her lover. I will divorce her and make sure she gets nothing from me. It's the least I owe myself after everything she has done. Fortunately, the divorce process should be simple. We have a clear prenuptial agreement and there are no children between us. The mediator should be able to resolve it quickly considering that she is pregnant with another man's child and has already expressed to me that she does not wish to continue in this marriage. I doubt she will try to prolong the process. And that's perfect for me. I want this chapter of my life to be over as soon as possible. Regarding his mistress, I have decided that this man's wife deserves to know the truth about what her husband has been doing behind her back. She is about to become a single mother, and I can only imagine how devastating this news will be for her. I feel terrible for her because she didn't ask for this, just as I didn't ask for it. But she deserves honesty, even if it is painful. I will tell her everything so that she can decide what to do with her life, just as I am deciding what to do with mine. Update 2. Thank you to everyone who continues to contact me daily in my private messages. I am truly grateful. I feel much better now that I have been reading all your comments and messages. I finally decided to reach out to this man's wife through Facebook. It felt like the right thing to do. So I sent her a direct message telling her all about the affair, the pregnancy and how long this betrayal had been happening behind our backs. I wasn't sure what kind of reaction to expect. I knew it was an incredibly sensitive and shocking thing to tell someone, especially a stranger. And I wasn't prepared for her response. She ended up leaving my message unread, which honestly makes sense. I can only imagine how surprised and overwhelmed she must have felt by everything I had shared. It's too much to take in, especially when you are suddenly confronted with such a painful truth about something so personal and hurtful related to your own partner. A few hours later, my phone rang and it was my ex-wife. As soon as I answered, she started shouting at me. She was furious, accusing me of interfering in her lover's marriage. According to her, he had no right to contact his wife. She went on to say that he had supposedly planned to leave his wife, but only after the baby was born. Now, because I had exposed their affair, his wife had thrown him out of the house and his plans had been ruined. His tone was full of arrogance, as if I had made a mistake by revealing the truth. He kept protesting about how I should have kept quiet and let them handle things their way. He told me it was not my place to say anything to that woman, but honestly, I was glad I had exposed them like that. My wife and that man had deceived us. They broke our trust and acted behind our backs. Now she and he thought I shouldn't have alerted his wife. I feel no remorse for exposing them. If anything, they deserve it. Later that night, the man's wife finally replied to my message. She thanked me for letting her know the truth, and I could tell she was deeply hurt, but also grateful that I had contacted her. She told me how she regretted now being pregnant with his baby and how she had never initially wanted to be a mother, but he had basically pressured her into continuing with the pregnancy. She wrote how after she became pregnant, she started to gain weight, and that was when her husband constantly told her that he always felt rejected by her. I guess that must have been when he met my wife and started to get involved with her. She also wrote how she wished she had known about this infidelity earlier so that she could have been better prepared, but she was still grateful that she had told her everything. I felt very bad for her and wished her well. I can only hope that during his divorce he manages to get what he deserves financially. He deserves to lose everything for what he has done to her, just as my ex-wife deserves to face the consequences of her actions. I hope that woman gets a good alimony settlement and uses it to rebuild her life without that unfaithful man limiting her. It feels good to know that I did the right thing, even if my ex-wife thinks otherwise. They made their own choices and now they have to face the consequences. Update 3. 2 months have passed since my last update and a lot has happened since then. My ex-wife and I are now officially divorced. As I had anticipated, she pressed for the process to be as quick and simple as possible. It was painfully obvious that her only concern was to end our marriage so that she could immediately start her new life with the man for whom she had betrayed me. She barely looked at me during the proceedings and never asked for a penny. In the days since the divorce, I have already consulted with a lawyer and have started to prepare my will. My parents and my sister will inherit everything I own. They have always stood by me through everything, and this is the least I can do to thank them for their unconditional love and support. I also want to thank all of you, kind strangers who have been contacting me in my private messages and offering your support. Although I can't reply to each one individually, I want you to know that I read all your messages and your words truly comfort my heart. All of you have shown me more kindness than I received from my own wife, and for that I am deeply grateful. It's amazing how the kindness of strangers can make such a difference in difficult times. I am currently preparing for even more difficult conversations in the near future. I still need to break the news about my illness to my parents and other relatives. Although I am still saddened by everything I'm going through, I have begun to accept that this is my reality. I'm going to accept that this is something I must face. I wish I had more time to resolve outstanding issues and experience more of life, but I cannot change what is happening. It is what it is, and I am trying to accept it. If there is one thing I hope people can learn from my experience, it is this: please don't take your health for granted. Get regular checkups no matter how busy or healthy you feel. Catching problems early can make all the difference, and I hope none of you ever have to face what I'm going through. Update 4. This week I finally gathered the courage to sit down with my family and share the news about my diagnosis. As I mentioned before, I was putting it off until my divorce was finalized because I didn't want to add more stress or confusion to an already difficult situation. Now that everything related to the divorce is settled, I felt the time was right to be honest with everyone about my cancer. To put it simply, my parents, other relatives, and close friends are devastated after finding out. They are shocked and deeply saddened because they know that I am still dealing with the pain of my ex, the fear, and the divorce. Hearing about my cancer is like another severe blow that they did not anticipate. Since then, my relatives have been visiting me frequently, whenever they can, so that they can spend more time with me. They are all doing their best to support me during this incredibly difficult period. My ex-wife's family has contacted me, which I did not expect. They hadn't really kept in touch during the divorce, but once they found out about my cancer, I guess through other people, things changed. My ex-mother-in-law was deeply emotional when she called me. She informed me that her daughter had now moved in with her lover barely a month after our divorce. Apparently, her wife had also thrown the man out. Either way, my ex-mother-in-law was crying and apologizing for how badly her daughter had treated me, expressing how upset she and her husband were at the way my ex had abandoned me. She told me how guilty she and her husband felt for what my ex-wife had done to me, but at that moment they didn't have the courage to ask for my forgiveness. It was a bittersweet moment because, on the one hand, I felt supported, but on the other, it's hard to hear that kind of apology after everything that's happened. I wish they had reached out during our divorce instead of now, when they have found out that I am dying. My in-laws have started sending me care packages every other day, which I guess is a kind gesture, although it doesn't make up for the past. Of course, after my in-laws found out, it wasn't long before my ex-wife found out too. She tried to call me, but I didn't answer. Honestly, I no longer wish to speak to her. There is nothing more to say. I'm sure she feels guilty, and I know she will try to transfer that guilt onto me, but I just don't want to be part of that. Eventually she left me a voicemail expressing regret for what I'm going through and feeling bad for leaving me alone while I am dying. Then she went on to say that if she had known my diagnosis, she would never have walked away from our marriage. It almost seemed like she was holding me responsible for not informing her about my cancer earlier. She mentioned how she has been receiving more and more criticism from everyone for abandoning me as a dying man, and she insinuated that it was somehow my fault for not sharing that information with her before, and how I shouldn't have left her in a difficult situation without at least warning her. Throughout her message, she didn't even apologize once or ask how I was doing. That woman is completely self-centered from start to finish. I didn't even bother to reply and just blocked her after that. At this point, my ex can think whatever she wants. I don't owe her any explanation or anything else. This whole situation has been exhausting. I've decided that I need to focus on myself now. This could be my last update. I hope you all have an excellent rest of the year and that things are brighter for everyone. Thank you for being here and for your support. Update 5. I really thought I wouldn't have anything more to update, but it turns out that my ex-wife just can't leave me alone, even though I'm literally dying. After blocking her yesterday, I did indeed have a moment of peace. But that brief moment of calm didn't last. Today she showed up at my residence unexpectedly, without an invitation. Not only did she show up discreetly, no, she was pressing my doorbell repeatedly as if trying to wear it out. I was so exhausted that I could barely lift my head off the pillow, but her incessant ringing made it impossible to stay in bed and ignore her. So I crawled to the door. My patience was at its limit and I opened it only to dismiss her. I shouted at her to leave me alone, but instead of backing down, she shouted back. She said she had come because she was worried something had happened to me. According to her, she was there to verify that I was still alive since I had not responded to her messages. I couldn't help but express my skepticism. Seriously, I told her directly that whether or not I was alive was no longer any of her business. I even explained to her why I hadn't heard from me. I had blocked her. She seemed genuinely surprised, as if the idea that I had blocked her was the most outrageous thing she had ever heard. Then she started demanding to know how I could do that to her, as if I owed her some kind of explanation for protecting my own peace of mind. She then launched into a long speech about how she had been struggling mentally since she found out about my diagnosis. She said she hadn't been able to sleep peacefully because she had been overwhelmed by guilt at having left me alone. Then, predictably, she turned everything into something about her, explaining how her friends and family were blaming her for the situation. Apparently they had been pointing at her, saying that as well as being unfaithful, she was now the woman who abandoned a dying man. And somehow, in her perception, all this was my responsibility. In fact, she had the nerve to ask me if I would perhaps talk to her parents and some of her friends just to clarify the situation. She wanted me to tell them that I didn't want to continue with the marriage either, so the divorce wasn't entirely her fault. Can you believe it? She expected me, the person she betrayed and abandoned, to go out of my way to make her life easier. I just stared at her in complete astonishment. I asked her directly if she had lost her mind. How could she even consider that I would be willing to do something so absurd? I told her that people could form their own opinion about her and, honestly, they were not wrong. She was unfaithful, she left, and now she was facing the consequences of her own choices. That was no longer my problem. But she persisted. She continued to plead and argue, desperate for me to agree to her request. And that's when I finally lost my patience completely. I warned her that if she didn't leave my property immediately, I would contact the police. I was fed up with her nonsense. I even threatened her with a social media post, saying that I would expose how she was harassing me in my own home without justification. That finally silenced her. She didn't utter another word after that. And fortunately she left without causing any more trouble. It was a relief to see her go, but honestly, I was completely exhausted after the whole incident. I don't understand how she has the audacity to behave like that. But at least now she knows I won't tolerate this behavior. I hope this is the last time I have to face her. I already have enough to worry about in my life at the moment without having to deal with her problems too. I just want to spend the time I have left in peace, surrounded by the people who truly love me and care about me.